Welcome to the What's Your Truth podcast, the show that not only showcases the best of independent artists, but also explores what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. With me today is John Henry Soto. John is a multi-talented multimedia artist hailing from Bayonne, New Jersey, and most recently residing in Nashville, Tennessee. Where to start with John? Well, first of all, he's one of the sickest, tastiest guitarists I've ever seen. A true master of musical intention, including the creation of space and the capturing of the true communication of any song he plays. The way John pulls emotion out of each note he plays is akin to the completeness with which a dog who hasn't eaten in a week sucks every last bit of marrow out of a soup bone, drawing every last bit of soul from a piece and sonically impressing it on your ears and your mind. You like that, John?
Wow.
I'm not even done yet. Beyond this, John is an actor and a comedian and also co-hosts the Counterparts Show, where he and co-host George Batista pick the brains of the likes of Steve Smith of Journey, Dave Sanchez of the E Street Band, and so many more. According to John, although music was his first love, he has always had a deep fascination with making films. He studied with renowned theater and film coach Ruth Kellerman, and he's had films in the Asian American Film Festival, the New Filmmaker Festival, and his film En Route took first place in the Milford, Connecticut Film Festival a couple of years ago. His film, And on That Day, was a semifinalist in the Nashville Independent Film Festival, as well as the Phoenix Shorts Film Festival, and he also acted in the film Down and Across, which was accepted into the prestigious Cannes Film Festival. The other thing to know about John is that he is one of the warmest, most genuine people you will ever meet, ever supportive of the arts and artists. He's simply one of the coolest people on the planet, and it's an honor to have him on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, John Henry Soto.
Wow. Thank you so much, Johnny. Holy cow.
Moo.
I was like, who is he talking about? I don't know that guy.
So
That's
here
awesome.
we are, John.
Thank
We've
you. Thank
I
you.
feel, in many ways, I feel like we're past due to have the conversation we're about to have. We've been aware of each other for a long time.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
bought some of my music, and I've been watching your music and listening to your music, so we're mutual patronizers of each other in a good way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're an amazing guitar player, and what the tremendous compliment coming from you. I really appreciate that. And great singer as well. And just songs. I have your records, and it's really great. So thank you so much.
Right on, man. Thank you. Well, cool. Well, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Very good. So the first question I have for you is, how did you decide that you wanted to become a musician?
How did I decide? Well, when I was 5 years old, my great grandma came to the house, and in a Puerto Rican family, when your great grandma comes to the house, it's sort of like the queen, right? So we had to get the rocking chair reupholstered, and everything had to be set, and the food and all that. So I remember she came in and she sat in her rocking chair, and she was sitting in the middle of the living room, people all around her. She was, I think, maybe like 90 something at that point, and she called me over. I was like 5. I mean, I'm short to begin with, and I remember the rocking chair, the actual handles were like to here to me, you know. She called me over. She said, "Come here," and she said, "Let me see your hand." And she said, "You're gonna be a guitar player." She said at that age, and I was like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, you're gonna be a guitar player. I see that that's what you're gonna be." And I was like, I never really thought. I mean, I thought about it, but it wasn't anything. But I remember when I was, but then I got really obsessed with music, just listening to music. It was like, and you know how it is. It's an obsession that it you don't even you're not even aware of it. You're just that every single day you're listening to music, a ton of it, and you're discovering a lot of music. And I took a shoebox strip, a shoebox, and I put rubber bands around it, and I started kind of doing that. And my grandfather was like, "Okay, you know what? We're probably gonna have to get him something." So at the age of 9, he took me to the guitar store we had it in the Bronx there where I was raised, and he bought me his classical guitar. And I didn't. I mean, all my uncles used to play, so they taught me some chords, and I have a lot of stories about that. Playing with them and in different situations. Holidays was big, and but I didn't really take to it till I was probably around 15, 16. Was like, this is all I want. I really want to do this, and it was in my head. And that I took my little brother, he was a little younger than me, and I said, "Can you come with me? I want to go to the thrift store somewhere." and we went to this. It wasn't even a thrift store; it was like a pawn shop, and we were driving by always on the bus, and I would always see these guitars on the window. So I went in and I bought a $60 beat up, not beat up, but it was not great acoustic guitar, steel string, and that's what I learned to play on. And it was really during that time that I really just got so into it, and it was a different era, right? We didn't have YouTube.
Right.
I had a library that I had to go get books out of, and then learn the chords and copy them down and figure that out. And it was right around that age that I really wanted to do it, and then that just kept it just. I don't know if it was a day where I said, "Yeah, I want to become," but it was. I knew I was obsessed with with the instrument and with music and with trying to create something. So it was right around that time.
Right on. That's awesome. And yeah, I feel like every musician has stories like that. Like I have a story like with my dad and like just with an old guitar, an old instrument, a hand me down, something that's such a common thread with a lot of artists.
Yeah,
And there's something beautiful about that actually. It's
it
almost like in a way a passing of a torch, isn't it?
It's so beautiful. I mean, we're missing so much nostalgia right now with the technology. It just takes away so much of like the beauty of the stories and it's like now you'll get a pop-up ad. Like right now you and I are talking about guitars. Well, I
Mhm.
guarantee you when we go to our Facebook pages where there's going to be guitars on both sides of our and emails and all that stuff. It's just the way it is, and there's just something beautiful about finding it with without that just spiritually.
Yeah, like you were led to it, not someone fed it to you via some marketing
Right.
channel. No,
Right.
100%. I
Right.
totally agree with that.
Yeah, love it.
So I think you kind of answered this, but just to make sure, I'm going to ask this question anyway. So, what was the first experience you remember having with music, like at all with music?
Well, right around that that time, I maybe a little older, after maybe I was maybe 6, 7 years old. My uncles, like I said, played, and one of my uncles came to the house and he put his guitar on the bed, on my grandparents' bed, and I remember going in there and unlatching it, and I opened it up and I just ran my fingers through the strings, and it was like it was like this. I made this noise. I was like, "What the hell just happened?" I was like, "Whoa, that was awesome!" And my uncle came in and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, and he caught me and stuff." And he was like, "But he was, my uncles were all great, and my family was really supportive." He showed me my first chords, when I got older. But that was
Mhm.
really the first time that that it affected me, like something that I touched made a sound that was pretty. The
Yeah.
guitar was in tuned. If had it been untuned, who knows? But it was perfectly perfectly in tuned. But yeah, it was great. So I don't know if that answers it, but I think that
No, that's a great answer. And again, that's a
yeah.
beautiful answer.
Mm.
So, who are the biggest influences on your work and why?
On my work, I grew up in the South Bronx, right? So in the South Bronx, there was not a lot of blues and jazz guys hanging around. We were listening to pop radio stuff, and then hip hop, of course, and or what we called rap back then
Mm.
came out, and that was a big influence on me. Rap music in the beginning stages, I loved it. But it wasn't until I heard, and we had a lot of music and Spanish music, so I would listen to Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez and all these Spanish Jose Feliciano, who kind of was crossing over back and
Absolutely.
forth and stuff. But it wasn't until I heard Santana,
Mhm.
um, when I was, I don't know, maybe 12, maybe years old or something, that I was like, what is that? Like I didn't the warmness of those notes was something that it was like butter, and it was and I remember, I mean, I could say I still get like goosebumps just like thinking about it, because I remember just being like so amazingly touched by the the power behind it, the energy behind it, the spirituality behind it. I mean, not to sound so cheesy, but I'm a cheesy guy. I don't really give a crap. But um, you know, I just was like blown away by that, and that's when I wanted. I found out who he was, and then again, we didn't have internet, right? So it was like you just had to turn on the radio and find a station and hope that they play some Santana music, and then go out and try to find some records back then, records and cassettes and whatever.
Mhm.
But that was really the first, the big influence, and then later on, I started listening in New York. We had Scott Muni was the big radio. He was on classic radio, Scott Muni 102.7,
Mhm.
and I would listen to him religiously. And through that, I heard, Eric Clapton and Stevie Ray Vaughan became a huge, huge influence, that just kind of snowballed at that point. But Santana was the one that kind of, because it was Spanish, it was, he's very, very Latin fusion, Afro Cuban music, all
Yeah.
fused together. It kind of infiltrated my life and, or, my environment, because Oye Como Va was a Tito Puente song, which he
Oh,
covered. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So he covered it. And that kind of introduced me to that, you know, and to a bunch of other guitar players.
Right on. Yeah, and it's funny because it's my experience. Like, there's like two kinds of like guitarists as far as like even guys like you and I go. Like, there's people that are really into like the super technical stuff, like sweep picking and all that stuff. Then there's the guys that are into like the really emotional, soulful, like feel every note playing. And I've always been more the second. Like, Slash is my favorite. Santana is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And there's those guys where you feel every note they play.
Yeah,
You
I
know.
love that. The sustain, I'm a big sustain guy. I mean, we just lost Jeff Beck, who I was a big, big, big fan of as well.
Mhm.
And he had a combination of both,
He did.
right? Because he was like, he wasn't any other, there's no guitar player like Jeff Beck. You can't say that he plays like anyone.
Right.
It was his own creation. But yeah, the emotional stuff for me was always, Gary Moore.
Hmm.
And today, Joe Bonamassa is like incredible with
Yeah.
how what he does, and um, Robin Ford also. There's just so many that have that they really, and that's another thing. You don't have to hit a billion notes.
Nope.
Like now with the internet, and you go on Instagram and you see these 10-year-olds like doing Van Halen Eruption note for note, and it's impressive technically. So I'm not to take anything away from the technical ability, but there's it becomes a novelty act at some point, and the emotions of it, again, it's hard to talk about this, because it's not like I don't want to take anyone's art away or say that it's,
No, 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 no.
but there's something about BB King hitting one note
Yes.
and everyone falling out of it. You know what I mean? Than to have someone hit 3,000 notes in a measure. And that's to me is it's always been a big part of my playing.
Right on, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what's the weirdest thing that's ever inspired you?
The weirdest thing?
Yep.
Well, PBS. And I talk about this sometimes, because PBS was sort of a thing when I was born. It kind of came around that time, and everybody was talking about it as educational television. So my grandmother, didn't speak English, and she thought, okay, well, my grandpa as well, and they put me in front of PBS all the time. Like, that's all I watched. So Mr. Rogers was sort of like my dad, and Sesame Street and all that. But of course, they would leave me there too long, and then like you had Wall Street Week, and so I learned all this political stuff too. But that was
Hmm.
just a fluke. But we had, at night I would watch again. I would start watching PBS, and it was the first time that I ever saw Jimi Hendrix was on PBS.
Really?
First time I ever actually saw him, what he looked like. I had no idea. Listening to 102.7 and listening to all that, never knew what he looked like, because there was no, we didn't have money growing up, so I couldn't go buy guitar magazines or anything. Television didn't really show Jimi Hendrix, you know what I mean, like regular television. But there was this documentary that aired on PBS, and it was from 1972, and he died in 70. So it was like a fresh documentary where you got to see a lot of the people that were actually with him. And it was the
Yeah.
first time I saw it, and I was so blown away. It was so weird though, because it was like PBS, how did that happen? But it was, I saw Bruce Springsteen there for the first time. I saw Crosby, Stills and Nash. I saw Peter, Paul and Mary. Uh, just a lot of different artists that PBS would have these drives, and they would show these shows. And so that was probably the weirdest place to kind of get influenced by someone.
Wow.
PBS.
Yeah, that is really random, but that's cool though, man. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, apparently PBS had it going on back in the day.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with PBS today, but back then they were kicking it.
Oh
Mr.
yeah,
Rogers for
man.
me was like awesome.
No, I know. I grew up Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street. I grew up on all the same stuff, so
Yeah.
I was the same kid. Though
Yeah.
I never saw Hendrix or anything else like that on PBS, sadly.
Yeah.
So how has your art influenced other people?
You have to ask other people, I guess.
Well, from your perspective.
I mean, from my I'm blessed that I do have, really great friends and people that follow my stuff who actually reach out to me, and I get really nice messages, from people. I do, a lot of I'll do a Zoom call with people, if they need help with anything. Um, so, I think what influences the most about what I do to others, I think, is the fact that I don't live my life thinking that I want to do one thing, or I live my life being creative. So, like, I have a family. I'm a social media manager. I do my own social media. I have my show. I have my films. I got my music. I don't. So people will sometimes be like, "Oh, I don't have time to do all that stuff." It's not really that crazy because you're passionate about it, and you get up. I get up early, and I just work towards things that I enjoy doing. So I think that influences people a lot. And people, I just had a call yesterday with a really good friend of mine who called me up and wanted to pick my brain on a podcast that he's launching and some other things. And that, and I'm always accessible for that. If people want to reach out to me for any questions and stuff, I'm always available. I'll schedule time and try to figure it out. So I hope that the biggest influence that I can have is that, if you feel it, then do it. If you're passionate about it, do it. Don't wait for anyone's permission. Don't wait for the time to be right. I guarantee you it will never be right. If you want to do it, you have to do it at that moment. And if it's random, because that's another thing that sometimes people go, well, you got to pick one thing, and really focus on that. And
Hmm.
there's certain truth to that in some ways, but at the same time, that's not really who I am. I like to play music, and I like to write films, and I like to act if I get something that fits. I like to do social media. I like to do these. I like to do my show, Counterparts, and so and I did those things not because I someone advised me, because I felt that. So if you feel it,
Yeah,
do it.
that is incredible advice. And I also, the one thing you said earlier that I just really want to acknowledge, and I kind of touched on in my intro, is that, along with being an incredible artist, which you really are, like, you get the community aspect of it too. It's not like nobody here gets out on their own, right? And it
No,
really is something where I've witnessed this over the years, and it seems like, the social media explosion on the one hand has been cool because it's led to a lot of collaboration, but I've also seen a lot more of like the cutthroat competitive stuff among artists, and I've never understood that, and it really is cool to that you get that and you get the community of it, and you're actually just willing and there to help people that need help, and it's a give and take world in the arts. Like it's really a team sport.
100%. I mean, you have to. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine like an artist. First of all, I love artists, right? So whenever I'm anywhere, it doesn't matter if I hear live music playing anywhere, I'm gonna go, and I don't care if they're playing Bon Jovi, "Living on a Prayer," and like here in Nashville, that's like a big song that everyone, you
Oh,
know,
really?
it's played everywhere and all the bars, the bands. I don't care. I want to hear it. I want to hear the musicians. I want to see them. I just love artists. So I think being there for an artist is really the most important thing that you can do as an artist, because you're right. We're all in this together. It's like, and together we can really, really influence many people and then help each other. Not, I don't have all the answers. And sometimes I'll talk to somebody and they'll help me out in one area. And if I can help the other guy out in that area that he needs help in, well, man, that's like the best of all worlds,
100%. I think that's the other thing that's God, you are just throwing down the nuggets of gold here, man. Because that's the other thing too is like there's also these guys that are afraid to admit they don't know something and that they're not at the
Huh.
top of their game. That's like, dude, I mean, there are guys at the top of their game that don't even consider their topic. And like Billy Sheehan practices like I don't know how many hours a day, and he's the best rock bass player on the freaking planet.
Right, right. Yeah,
And you know what I mean? So there's a humbling aspect too that I think also a lot of guys, especially the younger guys, they just really miss, you know?
yeah. And just to talk a little bit about that, you mentioned also social media and stuff, because I think what happens with social media, and I work in that space, and I use it as a tool, I use it as a communication, but what I see is everyone now is sort of a celebrity in little their little box,
Yeah, right.
um, and that can create this false sense of something, even of purpose. You may think that your purpose is to be in this box and to show something that, and then you might lose sight of what it is that you really want to do or what your goals are because you're getting the likes doing this, but that's not really what you wanted to do. You wanted to do this,
Yeah.
and so I see that a lot also with social media, and that part of it is really dangerous, I think. um I'm on these platforms enough to see that there's a lot of not aberration. I mean, there is aberration obviously, but
Totally.
but there's also a lot of sadness in the idea that the social media platform is going to fulfill something. And when to really fulfill something, you got to put the phone down, you got to put everything down and just really be with yourself and really understand what it is that you really want. I always have my book here with me. I got my pencil. I'm always writing down ideas and notes and and feelings and things. I'm here, you know what I mean? I'm not out in those. I put myself out there and I'll do silly things out there and I'll put myself playing music or whatever. But I use it as a tool, just like if the printing press was out today and we were back, a couple hundred years ago, I would use that. I would try to get an ad into the printing press. That's same thing I would do, except now it's very accessible. We have a pretty powerful tool in our hands, if we use it correctly. So that's one
Mm.
of the things that I'm passionate about, helping artists also use social media to their advantage, where they can actually get their message out there, and expand their dynamics and stuff.
Absolutely. And you're totally right. The purpose, the message is really what matters. And yeah, I think I'm with you. They get so interiorized into social media as some like, I don't know. It's like, it gives people this really strange sense of like, not that people aren't important in their own right, but this weird sense of like self importance and like putting
Yeah,
self on pedestal.
yeah.
It's not like wrong to be proud of yourself and to like, be out there and what you're doing, but there's just something, you're right. There's some kind of weird aberration that gets attached to that for some reason.
It does, yeah. It's really interesting sociological experiment of some site.
Yeah, the last 25 years has been a really weird sociological experience.
Completely.
So, shifting gears a little bit, do you have any pre-show or pre-studio rituals?
Um, I mean, show. It's been a long time since I've just started playing with a new group recently, but I hadn't played for a while. But I remember, well, the one thing, and it wasn't really a pre. It was something that I did not do. It was I never drank like
Good.
alcohol at all ever before a show, and I never ate a big meal before a show. That was like I had, because I had early on I had experiences, not so much with alcohol because I've never really been a heavy drinker, but with food. You're going on stage, so I eat a big meal and then you're on stage and you're like, I think I'm gonna throw up. I'm only 2 songs in and I think I'm gonna puke. And so that's happened, So what I do is I make sure that I eat an hour before I have to go on stage so I can get feel relaxed and stuff. I also used to do a little checklist that I had, that I wrote on everything that I needed, and I had it taped to my pedal board. And it was like a
Yeah.
slight little thing, and I would just check out, make sure that I had all my cables and stuff. It's nothing worse than showing up and you're like, I don't have my good cable, and you're running around asking, can you lend me a cable? Um, and so those things like that, I don't really have anything I'm so excited to go up and play. Back in those days when we were playing a lot in New York. It was just a matter of making sure that I can get up there and all the technical stuff is, because we still have to also be in control of the technical parts of it, right? Even though that's not really where our art is, we use that artistically to get our sound out. So being in control of that and having really good control of your gear and stuff like that, that was something that I always really paid attention to before I went on stage or left the house even.
Beautiful. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, what risks, if any, have you personally taken for the sake of your music?
Ugh,
Man, I get that face a lot.
man. I mean, just doing it alone is like I remember those first. I was just telling somebody this story. I think I was telling my wife. I think that George, who's the co-host of Counterparts with me, he was in my band. He was the drummer of my band. We're cousins, and we grew up together. So he was the first drummer I ever played with. I'm the first guitarist he ever played with. And so, but we would go before we had our band. We would go to and try to play with other musicians, and we head into Brooklyn and dark Brooklyn, and we're driving through these dark streets, and you have no idea who you're gonna meet, and there's always something. See, we didn't think about it at the time. In retrospect, I'm looking like, man, what are we crazy? It's like we're going into like dark Brooklyn, bad neighborhoods to try to find these musicians to play with.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest risk, you know, was always the people investing in the people, that you're playing with. Because you really, at some point, you have to decide, do you want only really nice people? Do you want great musicians? Do you want a combination of both? Well, obviously, we want a combination of both. We want great people, but you have to then be able to pull the plug if something's not working very quickly. And I spent sometimes a little bit too long with not pulling that band-aid off. So I mean, I can't say that I can't even say everything is a risk. Everything is a risk. You know what I mean? It's like you don't know. You don't know you don't know that show that you're gonna do if you're, I've stepped on my cable before and pulled it out in the middle of in a solo. I'm
Mhm.
like, I once went up like this and I hit my glasses and, but you take the risk of just being in front of, this is the business of judgment. You know what I mean? And if you don't have the the cojones, right, to really get up there and
Yeah.
confront whatever it is, then it's gonna feel like a much bigger risk, you know. But if you just say to yourself, you know what, this is what I have, this is what I do. And actually, I've done this before in the mirror, like a dork. Like if I'm going to an audition back in New York, I was auditioning. I'm like, okay, well, okay, they called me, right? They called me. They want to see me. They must have seen something. I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna be me, and I'm gonna try to do the best I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but you go in and you lay it on the table. You just lay everything there and you risk it. In art, to really be an artist, you have to be able to confront life and confront people, and it's all a risk, man.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, just being willing to be vulnerable and
Yeah.
even just for the sake of experiencing stuff to then write about it later. I mean, yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot to that as well. I could totally see that.
Yeah, and enjoy the journey. You know what I mean? I remember even like times when I went on auditions that I knew I was like so bad. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Like I left there and I was so embarrassed. But I remember walking to the elevator laughing, like, oh man, here's a story that I'm gonna
All
be
right.
able to tell, and it didn't deter me from going to the next audition. It was just that moment I learned that I need to do, I kind of regrouped and I said, okay, I screwed that up. I'm not gonna do that again. And it was a simple thing, a simple mistake that I made, but it cost me, a Time Warner commercial, right? So those kinds of things can be painful, but keep going, and that might sound like a cliche because so many people say that, just keep going, don't give up, but It's so true, man. You just have to, whatever happens, you have to just go, okay, that was messy. Let me go shower up, get some get us some tea and sit down and let me regroup and just keep going because you will get there.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like, and every day, just do something, even something small, just do something that forwards at what you're doing
Yeah.
in some way. So
Yeah.
again, that's incredible advice, and
Yeah.
definitely an oft overlooked point, because it is so simple and cliches, but it's very true. It's
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And I always say to, the clients and stuff, just move the needle forward every day, a tiny bit. Tiny
Mhm.
bit. You have a list of 30 things. Go look at looking at the list to assess it
Yeah.
could be moving the needle forward. Maybe you didn't do anything on the list that day, but at least you went, opened it up, and you looked at the list, and you said, "Okay, I could do this maybe this weekend." And boom, you did something.
Yeah.
But just keep
Yeah.
moving forward and keep, keep that needle moving.
Absolutely. So, what's the craziest risk you've ever seen another artist take for their craft?
Oh, I've heard so many amazing stories. That Steve Harvey has a story that he talks about, that he's told a few times about getting onto the Apollo. He had an opportunity to get there, but he had no money, and he didn't have anybody to ask. He had not enough money to get to New York, and he called up. He hung up the phone and he heard his beep like he had another message. This was back in the day we had to call your voicemail. So he called his voicemail back again, and there was an opportunity for a job, to get paid. So he had to get somewhere. So he said he just had enough gas money, just enough to get to that one gig. So he got to that gig. He made that money. The guy said, if you can stay at one night, I'll pay you again. He stayed 2 nights, just had enough money to go to New York for the audition for the Apollo, had no place to go. He showed up at the Apollo during the day when they were like, well, you can't come in here now. The show's at night. you know?
Mm.
But he somehow got his way in, and the guy said, you could stay upstairs, but don't come down, and just having that story and hearing him tell that story, if anybody wants to check it out, you can check it out on YouTube. But he gets emotional during that story and stuff. So I mean, I've seen that. Arsenio Hall, I remember, slept in his car. And
Mm.
um, a lot of and people that I know really, they put in. They risk a lot. You risk a lot to do this. People risk relationships and marriages and um, a lot of things. You have to try to find the balance to be you can be a good person and be responsible for things, but at the same time, sometimes you have to just do something that maybe is not going to make a lot of people happy.
And what is it they say? The right decisions are not always the popular ones.
No, they are definitely. I think most of my decisions out of on my art and stuff were not fully popular or even understood. Like, well, why are you gonna do that when you doing this? And I was like, I just feel I have to, you know.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is with art, it's your intention, it's your communication. It's really, and that's the other thing too, because you're totally right. It's like doing it. I mean, there are crazy things that people do to maintain it. It strains parts of their life, but
Yeah.
that's also almost the acid test of, are you meant to be an artist or aren't you? Because when they're the people that are really like artists, they're meant to do it and they can't really do anything else.
Right. Yeah. They don't. Yeah. I mean, what can you like? You look at stories like Elton John. What is Elton John gonna do
Right.
other than be Elton John? You know what I mean? He ain't gonna be working, like as an accountant. Yeah.
Although fun story as a side note that reminded me, of was Alan Rickman,
Mm,
who obviously was one of the greatest
right,
British
right.
actors ever.
Yeah.
Toward the end of his life, there was a stint where he was actually working, and I think he just did this for fun. He worked for an airline, like at the counter. He literally did that, and it was just, I don't know if that was he got bored with something with life or what, but
Yeah. Yeah.
he didn't need the money, but he literally did do that. So I guess every
Well,
once in a while there's someone that does that, but
yeah. Well, didn't Andy Kaufman did the same thing? He worked at a pantry. He was like he would clean. He kept that job through his whole life. He would go and pick up clean the tables up at this restaurant. And he just
yeah.
always had this job. So I was like, okay, but yeah, those are eccentric people that just want to be part of life, and they can do it. They can do whatever they want. And at that point, in that stage of their careers, and just want to do something interesting. I love that.
No, 100%. So what's one thing about you that would shock everyone to know?
Well, sometimes it shocks people. My wife is 5'10" and I'm about 5 nothing. So that sometimes shocks people when I tell them. I was a sort of a ghetto celebrity with breakdancing. I did a lot of breakdancing back in those days, and I won some contests, and I danced for the mayor and for some other people in the Bronx. So I mean, sometimes that shocks people. Not too much. I mean, I'm especially now with social media, I'm so out there. I've told not every story, but quite a bit of stories. Yeah, yeah. And then there's
Awesome.
some darker stuff that I don't talk about, like my growing up and in
Sure.
poverty and stuff like that. That might shock people, but I usually don't really talk about that unless it comes up in a conversation about the subject.
Sure. Makes total sense. So what's the one thing or tool that you absolutely cannot live without as an artist, and why?
Um, well, my guitar.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's the thing that I've had the most since I was very young. I've always had that. Like, it's never been, what I mean. I've never been in a house that didn't have guitars, so I don't. It doesn't even. I can't even compute not having that. I do like my little. This is kind of cheesy, but I do like my little pads and pencil because I like writing a lot. So I'm
Yes.
always with a pen or a pencil or something to write. So I love that. Those are my tools. And if I had a guitar, a pencil, and a little booklet, I'm okay. I can live on an island forever, really, as long as there's food there, and coffee. And
Right.
I think we're good. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's I dig that. Yeah, I like I've always been a pen and notebook guy too. Like I,
Yeah.
I hate writing on like a laptop. I do it sometimes when I just don't have a choice or when I'm
Yeah.
kind of need to be fast and don't have a pen.
Yeah.
But like yeah,
Yeah.
I like things I can hold and touch and
Completely. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
scripts I do online because on a thing because it's formatted and all that stuff. But when it comes to like songwriting or writing something, or it's got to be pen to paper. There's just something about putting it into the physical universe and making it have your hands, your physical body, not have it up here somewhere or in ones and zeros. Just put it really down there and see
yeah,
it. That you wrote that down that was up here, and there's just a power to that.
100%. So what has been the most difficult piece of music for you to create and why?
I've always I have trouble incorporating more jazz into my playing. I love jazz, and I could play some chords, a bunch of chords, but it's always been difficult to like really incorporate it into what I want to do. I think lately in the last I don't know, not lately, but the last like 10 years, I would say, I've gotten better at doing that and adding more of that. It almost felt like I had, ignorance sometimes is bliss, right? They say ignorance is bliss. So when I was very young, I knew what the chords, how to play the chords, but I didn't really know what they were. I didn't know where they fit. I didn't know the science behind it, or all that. And so I just played them, and I wrote a ton of songs that way, which were songs that I really liked. And then somewhere along the line, I learned,
Right.
which was the biggest mistake I made. I started learning what actually everything fit in and how it all worked, and then you start going with rules and stuff like that. And now in the last 10 years, through some of my studies, through my church and stuff, I've kind of been able to open up myself a little bit more and start being almost more native again, to my creativity. And so I'm doing that more now, which is exciting, and I like what I'm writing these days.
Awesome. And it's interesting. I know what you mean about the jazz stuff. I was actually personally kind of fortunate because I kind of cut my teeth on jazz a little bit, but I never learned it to the degree because I'm like you. Like when I got too dialed into theory, it just kind of became a stop.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and as the years have gone on, I've just done it more. I just kind of naturally, almost instinctively figured out parts of it anyway. But learning the basic song structure stuff and improvisation in jazz was invaluable. Actually,
Yeah.
there's yeah,
Yeah, that part of it is really important, and I mean, I think also, theory is amazing. I
yeah,
mean, it's a language that's just beautiful, and the things you can create and how it flows. So, I mean, I say, if you can learn theory, um, do it. I know people say, school and all that stuff. I say no. You know, I say do it. I say do it because it's also going to give you. Right now, you have YouTube, and YouTube is giving so many people so much content. Like I follow Rick Beato. I don't know if you know Rick
I
Beato.
know. Yeah,
Yeah, so I follow Rick Beato a lot, and he's an educator of theory, and he's a super smart guy. Um, and the way he does it, it kind of makes it very accessible. It's you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, you could do this and still be very creative. You don't have to. There's these people that are like, I don't do theory, I play by ear. I'm like, well, that's cool too. You know what I mean? I mean, some of the greatest of all times did that.
right.
But I say try to really dive in because the world is changing. Um, Playing by ear is okay, but there's a lot of people out there that are now learning theory, and if you can compose, that really can go a long way. So I encourage people to study.
And that is it's a really great viewpoint actually. That I don't know if I've ever heard anyone take that viewpoint. Usually it's the other way where they're like, I'm ear trained and that's the thing. And which is like that's great, but I can see your viewpoint 100%. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to look at what it is that that some of these greats, like I look at like Chick Corea, right, who was
Mhm.
the greatest of all time, right? You know, very theory oriented, and then Billy Sheehan, we just mentioned, um, no theory, but
Right,
the greatest of all time, the
right.
bass player. You know what I mean? Like freaking like one of the greatest of all time. So and actually I was at a workshop with Billy Sheehan, and he actually was talking about. I asked the question because so I was like, "Okay, it's good." So I asked the question, but we were talking about theory, and he doesn't. He goes, no, I don't. I play by ear. I know everything on. I know the scales, and he's at another level. I'm not. He's just at another level of understanding the instrument. But one of the things that was fascinating was like, why was theory created in the first place? And he was like, well, the reason was there was no other way to record. If I come up with a piece today, if I'm Mozart and I'm writing something today, and tomorrow when I come back, I'm not going to remember what I wrote. I got to figure out a way to document exactly what I just developed so I can come back and read and know exactly what I did with the steps, the notes, the measures, everything. And so that was why one of the reasons why it was developed, and why it became such a thing. But there's just such a big scope, there's so much involved in it. Um, Anyway, I can go on that one.
No, and you're talking about, and it is. It's like an entire. I mean, you said it, it's a language. Like it is a whole other language, 100%.
Amazing.
Yeah. So if you were going to write a book about your career up to this point, what would you title it?
God. Yeah, I mean, you know, uh, I would always say looking up because I'm short, so I would, and so I was always looking up. You know what I mean? Like I just always thought it's always gonna get better. I never thought, even growing up where I grew up, it can be pretty hopeless in that type of environment. Poverty and violence and stuff like that, and drugs. So when you're surrounded with it, it can get pretty dark. But I was always looking up. Always looking up, and I always think about that. Just looking up at the world. And that's what I would just call it that.
I love that. I like that. It's like the mentality of choosing your attitude. That's such a great message.
Yeah, I think so. It's important, no matter what your environment is, for you to decide. Well, are you that environment or are you you?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what are your plans for world domination?
Well, Well, me, coffee, and my guitar are going to really, I think it's funny. But my counterparts show is really become a great vehicle for George and I to really help and entertain a lot of people. Um, and we really want to have the counterparts show have be an umbrella to other different connections. So we have counterparts wellness, we have counterparts moving pictures where we talk about film, and counterparts music and stuff like that. So we have, so that's really going to be the world domination, and this year last season, our first season last year, we really had an amazing year. We had no idea we were going to be interviewing some of the people we did, and it was so much fun. And then this year, we really want to take that to the next level and have just team up with other organizations, which we are scheduling that as well. And that's going to be where we really do that. Where we really, because it's all about helping people, and I know that with counterparts, I know I can help a lot of artists. I'm very understanding of where I am right now in my life, and I have a body of work, and I have a lot more coming. But at the same time, I want to help people more than anything. And, especially artists in the inner city. It's a really important thing for me. Having been in that environment. If you're a guitar player living in an inner city, it's really hard, to find others, and so if we can create a place that we can come, a safe place, that's really important to me. So that's something that it's all built into what we're working on to take over the world.
I love that. And just as a note, I can't remember if I told you this or not, but your podcast was one of the inspirations behind me doing this podcast, and for a
Really?
very reason to help. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really.
Wow.
This was a podcast I'd wanted to do a few years ago, and then life just kind of got busy, and I'd kind of put it to the side a few years ago and forgot about it. And then I saw one of your episodes of Counterparts, and I remembered this, and I was like, that's what I want to be doing, is something, not a carbon copy of you because you're you,
No,
but
no, yeah.
I am having my own concept of like how to help other artists via what I'm doing with this podcast. So I really thank you for doing that, because
No,
it impacted me, man.
that
And
is
you're the reason I'm here
awesome.
right now.
That is so awesome. Thank you for telling me
So
that. That's awesome.
back to that question of how your art has influenced others. Well, here's one example.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
And on that, so last question, and again, the show obviously is not only showcasing independent artists, it's also exploring what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. So, John, what's your truth?
You know, my truth is really sincerity on not just music, and but as a person. Like, if I meet if I meet if I'm in the grocery store and I'm talking to somebody in the grocery store, and I go and I'm talking to the president of the United States, or the king of England, I guess, at this point, um, I'm going to be exactly the same person. I don't change, because I don't feel that sincerity, who I am and what I want to bring to the table is always going to be exactly what I want to bring to the table at any table that I get invited to. It's not, doesn't change. So, that is my truth. It's really something that I've come to realize as I've aged. Now I see that more than ever, but in the beginning, I did have that. I just didn't know what that was. As I got older and I started learning more about myself, I realized, oh, okay, you know what? I've always just been this guy, and I always talk like this, and I don't, and I'm a really good listener. I think that's what makes the the counterparts show work. I like to listen to people. I think that's important. And yeah, so that's my truth. It's just really sincere in what I want to give others. It's and that sometimes gets me in trouble, by the way. Like sometimes I'm a guy that will fall in love with someone instantaneously, not romantically, but I would feel like, guy, girl, whatever, I see that I'm like, man, that is an awesome. I want to be friends with that guy. That dude is amazing. He's so happy, and he's creating such great music. Same thing, with a group of artists. I suddenly want to be involved, and sometimes that's a little bit like I think I get a little too much, and people are they're like, what's going on with this
Mhm.
guy? I'll but it's actually what gets my guests. I ask guests to be on the show because I see somebody and I'm like, man, that'd be great to talk to this person. And um but it is a sincere thing. Like, I don't want anything from anyone other than I want to experience that journey, that they're on, and I want to understand it. So it's sincerity has always been something that I'm very that's my truth.
That's beautiful, man. And that's again, that impacted me hearing you say that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's why I don't even know how I could properly acknowledge that, because that was a really like next level. That was like a very like philosophically speaking. That's what the hell am I trying? I can't talk all of a sudden. You've made me speechless, is what you've done. Because I don't even like I said, that's so fundamental,
Yeah,
and it is. It's just such a pure truth, you
it,
know.
it really is. It really is. Especially artists are very vulnerable. I mean, we're
Um,
you know um I'm nuts sometimes. It's like we all go through these things. And so when you're dealing with, I'm blessed that I have a good foundation right now through my friends, my church, my family. But there's a lot of artists out there that are trying to find their truth and trying to find who they are. And so I think that they're cautious sometimes of who they let in.
yeah,
And then sometimes, and they should be. I mean, artists are magnets for scumbags, right? I mean, it's like, unfortunately, there's a lot of suppression that artists pull in, and it's important to stay really focused on that. But also, be aware that you might actually be pushing away somebody that can actually help too. So you
yeah,
have to really stay in present time and understand that situation, when you see somebody there that is interested in helping you in some way, ask questions. See, well, what is it? What are you? What do you do? What do ask, pull the string on that. You find out what's happening. It may be somebody that can really help. And that having that balance, I think, is really important for artists.
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I just grew as like a person.
Ah,
Just listening to you here, man. Thank you so much for being here. Before we end off, I did want to take the next 60 seconds and go ahead and plug anything you want, anything John Henry Soto. Go.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. First of all, thank you so much. You're awesome. You're a great listener as well, which is a big thing. You're gonna do fantastic in this. Please keep me posted on stuff. If you need guests, I will send you people that I can that you can interview that you'll love also. So let's stay in communication on that. And thank you
Absolutely.
so much for having me on here. For me right now, our Counterparts show is starting up again January 17th, which is on Tuesday. We're on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to counterpartsshow.com. You could download our app and you can actually watch it on your phone and watch all the other episodes. We're going to do our first show is going to be, we're going to talk about songs from 1983, which
Oh yeah.
believe it or not, it's 40 years ago. Yeah, I know. It sounds like 40 years ago. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the top 20 songs, and then George and I are gonna pick our top five, and we're gonna kind of go to battle on that. So that should be fun. But that's every Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night, counterpartsshow.com.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, John, again, thank you so much for being here, man. It's really been an honor.
man, this
Uh,
was my pleasure, man. Anytime. Thank you so much.
right on. So everyone, John Henry Soto, check him out. Links in the description. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace, y'all.
Take care.
Yeah, you follow your own rules and you preach them unto me. But you don't think before you act, and you ain't got no business with me. You don't know. Tell me what's your truth. Oh, what's your truth? Now you got